Welcome to this month's version of the Philmont Trek Talk Facebook group discussion about Philmont Scout Ranch and all the things you can do to prepare to have the absolute best trek possible. This one, what month are we in, guys?
September.
Seriously, what month are we in? September?
September.
Yeah. So my wife asked me a question right before the show started, like 10 minutes ago. Wait, you're doing what? Like, isn't the trek season over? Why are you doing this? Like, you still have these? When are you going to start up again later? It's like, whoa, no, we don't stop. We do these year round, 12 months a year. We got to get in and talk about Philmont and help people. And she's like, so what are you doing this time? I said, I'm glad you asked. And it was, this is our final kind of wrap up for the summer season, and we can talk a little bit about some remaining things from this summer, and we may have some other folks join us who were out there this summer, or they may not. We'll see. But this really kind of wraps up the coverage for not just for this year's treks, just the summer season treks, because there are still things coming. You know, if you want to go to Philmont, they still have things going on across the street at the training center. I thought, isn't there? Do you guys know, has the wood badge already happened? I know they had a wood badge scheduled for Philmont here. I want to say it was in September. I don't know.
Yeah, they also got Autumn Adventure going on in September and October.
That's right. And then after that come the winter. What do they call it?
Winter program, I think, in January, February.
Yeah, maybe sooner. I don't know when they're running that this year. So lots of opportunities. You can still get out there and get on the trail at Philmont. There are a variety of ways you can do that this year. But we're also going to transition after this month. We're going to transition into talking about 2023 summer treks, because that seems to be what most people want to talk about for the summer treks. All right. Show of hands. I see that Sal is in the green room. Do we let him in? Let's do thumbs up or thumbs down. Yeah, that's kind of where I am. I don't know.
Only if he has Christmas lights in the background.
Yeah, let him in.
Wow. You made it in by the skin of your teeth, Sal. And what I meant by that is
and he has Christmas lights. Yay!
Oh, okay. So the view changed. Let me zoom in a little closer so you don't see so much of the mess in my office. Oh,
it's getting better, Jeff.
Yeah, I've got a new camera that I really like, but it's a manual focus camera, so I got to reach up and there we go.
There you go.
Oh, close enough. Now I'm a little blurry. I got to fix it. Must fit. Oh, that's not fixing it. All right, so while I'm getting that, man, I like that. So let's dive right into a comment from Facebook user. And with that, a reminder. You know what? I can't say the reminder I was going to say was how to log in and give StreamYard permission to display your name. But we're not using StreamYard anymore, and I honestly don't know. With the new one we use called Melon app, I don't know if there's a way to give it permission. I should probably figure that out, but I haven't yet. So I'm going to pull up. It's Greg Wilder. I pulled it up on the other screen so that I can get names for who is Facebook user. In this case, it's Greg Wilder. We made it all the way to the Springs. We're heading to Philmont in the morning when one of our adults tested positive. Philmont said can't come, and we headed home. Wow. That's the first scenario like that I've heard of. And that is kind of heartbreaking. So I am terribly sorry to hear about that.
They did that over the
summer. That is the thing. I would ask, when was this? Was this early in the year, in June or July or August, when that happened?
Yeah, that's rough stuff. And man, can you imagine being the one person who who tested and maybe feeling responsible for the whole crew. That's a terrible position for someone to be put in. So
The only more difficult position is Monica, the registrar, because now she's got to process all those refunds, and I can't imagine how many scenarios, she's getting, and COVID issues and so forth. And
yeah,
we had
late June.
We had one that
Late June.
late June. It said, yeah, okay,
That's when we were there.
yeah, I had to get a refund, and it took a good 6-7 weeks to get the refund.
Wow.
Of course, then since we were a council contingent, they sent the check to my council office, made out to me. So they had to send the check to me to cash it, to sign it, But then it went into the council fund, so then they had to write a check to me.
That gave you leverage with the council, though, because you were standing between them and some money.
Yeah.
Well, and knowing the council that Darrel and I are in, it's like a SpongeBob episode. 2 years later.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, so I would like to welcome our esteemed and highly expert panel. So we'll go around the horn, and I will demonstrate the method that we will use to introduce ourselves. Hello, I'm Jeff. Welcome. I am the skipper of Sea Scout Ship 4019 in Burlington, North Carolina. I've been to Philmont 4 times, once as a youth, 3 times as an adult advisor. And I was going to throw in what my sign is, but I don't remember. Libra, and I'm a Libra. Okay, Darrel. Mr. T, excuse me.
Darrel Tadsen, Greater St. Louis Area Council, currently Vice Chairman for the district, serve on the Council High Adventure Committee, have organized council contingents for, I don't have enough fingers. Anyways, enjoy the camaraderie, enjoy the trip, and if you can finagle yourself any way to get to Philmont, do it. It's an experience of a lifetime that you as an adult or the scouts will live and remember for the rest of your life. Sal?
Sal Porto, Assistant Scoutmaster 212 in Lutz, Florida. Wilderness First Aid, Council Contingent Leader. This year will be my 8th Philmont Trek. And now that way.
Yeah. All right.
That way.
Rob Smith. I am also from the Greater St. Louis Area Council, just by happenstance. I am the High Adventure Chair for Troop 85, the Committee Chair for Crew 85, the Jamboree Chair for the Greater St. Louis Area Council, which is a highly challenging position now, since that's next year. And I'm also run a website called highadventurescouting.com, where it's podcast season, so we'll have all kinds of new podcast episodes coming out for all the council-based high adventure.
All right.
That's it.
Fun stuff. So, what's the right way to do this? I'm going to take us all off the screen for a second and show what our theme is. I got to find a smoother way to do that next time. That was kind of clunky. And we reshuffled the Hollywood squares. We're all in different segments now. So we may have to do that again later just to see where we end up. This could be kind of fun.
Sal even got up to move, so
I got up to move.
I should have told him I'm going to move everyone for you. You didn't actually have to get up and relocate yourself.
Oh, you told me to move, so I did.
Yeah. Overachieving as usual. So The way this program works, this is a participatory program. I do see some people showing up. We normally kill time for the first 5-10 minutes to give time for people to show up. So if you happen to be joining us from our Facebook group, you may have seen that just scroll by at the bottom. It'll come back by on the little ticker. There it is, the Facebook group address there. If you went in that bad, you can go type all of that in. I could pause it, but actually I probably can't pause it. You'll just have to catch it next time around. You may be watching on YouTube. You may be watching in replay on Odyssey or one of the other platforms like Twitter, or I can't even remember all the places we're being streamed right now. We're all over the place. So wherever you found us, down there at the bottom on the little ticker going by, that'll show you where the Facebook group is. The group is all about helping people prepare so that they'll have the best trek possible at Philmont. This month's program is recapping what we learned in 2022. So what do you think is the biggest thing that you learned this year? Why don't we go around the panel? I'll give you a second to think about that while I reinforce this a participatory program. We have had a couple comments from Greg out there. If you have anything you learned, if you have anything you'd like other people to learn from, if you're going next year and you want to learn something, we have a specific question, any of those things are fair game. Whatever platform you're on, put it in the questions. It'll pop up on a little sidebar where we could all see it. If we like the question, we may even put it on the screen like this. Boom. Although that's not a question there, is it? That's a statement. That's how this is going to work. So biggest thing that you learned this year, Mr. Sal Porto Jr.
Oh, you put me on the spot first. I was going to listen to everybody else and copy them. Say whatever Darrel says, I agree with him.
Yeah.
My biggest thing is hopefully next summer won't be as bad. The COVID camp, do not go to it. I'm sorry, it sucked. It was boring. There was nothing to do there. It was like a layover, but we were there for 3 days, a 3-day layover. So hopefully next summer that will be a thing of the past.
Right.
But what else did we learn? Trail Peak is not my favorite. How's that? Trail Peak is not.
I suspect you learned to take rain gear.
Why? I always take rain gear.
It was unseasonably wet.
Yeah, but we learned from the year before. So, and good rain gear, not cheap rain gear.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
that's all
I say effective rain gear. I don't care what it costs.
There you go.
I actually like cheap stuff, but effective is what's important, I think.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's all I learned. And I can't wait to be back next year. Okay, I'll make Darrel go now. Darrel, your turn.
Thanks. Well, as you probably all know, I didn't actually hike, but I was there at Philmont at the Welcome Center. And what did I learn, or what did we learn? Incoming crews are highly impatient. They want to get on the trail. They want to get going. They want to get processed through. I would ask you to have some patience. They do a fantastic job, getting you orientated, getting you up to your ranger, getting you into tents and so forth. There is a lot of in processing, and you just got to go through it. There's not a way to go around it. Arrive at Philmont as early as possible. If you're going to be late, and I mean late, like beyond 2-3 in the afternoon, and that's your first day, please contact Philmont and let us know, so they can make accommodations to work with you. I know unforeseen things happen, flat tires, buses break down, all kinds of things. Hopefully we'll have COVID either under control or behind us, and that won't be an issue. And I think too, and how do I want to put this to the advisors? Philmont has a process. Work with them as best you can. There may be other ways to do it, but this is the way they've found works the best for them, since they have to deal with all levels of experience, from the person, who's hiked the Appalachian Trail 2 or 3 times, to the guy or the scout who this is the first time he put on a backpack and is, gone from home for 2 weeks. And most of our talk, I think, will be about the 12-day treks as opposed to the 7 and 9. So those are the things that I learned, that we learned from the base camp. They do an absolutely outstanding job. Is there going to be a glitch here and there? Absolutely. I did hear through the end of the summer, most of the blowdown, the trails have been cleared. So I suspect, unless there's no major storms in the area over the winter, the trails should be in a lot better condition in 23 than they were in 22.
And if not, I'd like to go on record as to saying it's Darrel's fault because he just poked fate in the eye.
Okay.
Oh, we got some interesting ones here. Okay, and before we get to Rob and I's comments, I've adopted a new thing for live broadcasts. I have a board where I'm writing my stuff down, a whiteboard. So because if I don't, this is mine like a steel trap, baby. If I don't write it down, it's gone.
So you're like Karl Rove on election night. I see. Okay.
Really?
All right.
I don't know what that means. But
my mind's like a steel trap too, except they call it rusted.
Oh yeah, and illegal in 27 states.
Hey, Darrel, were you talking about us being not good at Welcome Center? Better not be.
No, there's some crews who, we'd love to see them 2 or 3 times.
Okay, so this was a very hard lesson that we see here. And I'd like to hear our two. All right, first and foremost, let me see. Can I change? There we go. So now we're not all covered up by the message there. We have 2 council contingent leaders here. What do you guys think of this lesson, this very difficult lesson to learn?
Well, if you go as a council contingent, you travel as a council contingent because, like for my case, we fly together. We rent buses. We don't travel individually. We travel as a crew, as a contingent. There's no way. I mean,
but you do that by choice. I think that this comment here that I think it was Greg that made this one as well. Yes, Greg Wilder again said. I mean, he's got a really good point. 30 people got turned away. That could have been 8 people or 12 people or something,
But if you're traveling as a crew, that would be, if you're driving, you do 3 different cars. But if you're traveling with 66 people, that's almost
where's the line on that? Because, if you've got a group like Darrel took everybody by Amtrak, well, you've got all the huge Amtrak, everybody on there. How do you police that? This seems to be a little crazy sort of policy that I think needs to stop. It's really screwing these people up. So
I don't know how you get around this one. It's really a mixed bag. If you travel separately, you incur additional travel expenses or the costs, anyways, because you don't have the scale of economy of, bus and vans and all of this. The train, good thing. What about an airplane? Even a crew, I know Sal had six crews, but what if one of the passengers? And but I also see from the side of Philmont, having been on both sides of the curtain, I appreciate their position too. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, it's no worse than traveling on the plane, and I have great sympathy for, and I feel terrible for the 30 people who had to be turned away. But if you bring it on the ranch and start spreading it, Philmont's got their concern. Now, what do they do with the 400 or 500 that are already there? Sal had the experience, had to end up you know, in a quarantine camp.
Yeah. So I think this was a nice spin, a good attitude that Greg exhibited here. So they just kind of consider that a shakedown this year, and they'll be even better ready to go for their trek next summer. So that's a good way to look at it. And I do want to come back because we were getting through the four of us and what we learned. But let's talk about another while we've got some things coming in. What can you share for a first-time group attending next year? Gear, clothes, water. I am going to take the reins on this one. I know it's a shocker, but I'm going to bring a link up on the screen here. And first and foremost, within our group, the Facebook group, you can ask questions. You can use the search function. We've been doing this for years. So, all right, did I do this wrong? There we go. Took a while for that to come up, and we'll go to this article on gearreport.com, gear-report.com. If you go under camping to best budget backpacking gear, it's aimed at Philmont, and it has all the different gear stuff. So the author of this article is kind of a shifty, shady fella. So take it all with a grain of salt. But yes, that means I wrote it. So it's got all the different gear that you could take. Lots of recommendations, but I think it's a little bit more important. There's some discussion about why some things are better or worse than others for different scenarios. So hopefully if people work through that, it will help you figure out what is going to be best for the type of backpacker that you are. So there is also Philmont publishes a gear list that a lot of people love. I think parts of it are outdated, but they're actively working to revise that list every year now. So and then I'll tell you what, in the last few years, I think it's gotten a lot better. Their gear list 5 years ago was crazy out of date, and it's actually, they brought it up to speed a bit in the last couple of years, in my opinion.
And they've gone as far to not the extreme as you can get, but they've tried to cover every scenario and so forth. But as we've all four of us sitting here are looking at each other, try things out. That's what shakedown hikes are for. Find the gear that works for you. Experiment, try it, see if it works. Rain gear, stand under the sprinkler, see if it keeps you dry. It sounds stupid, but
if you hadn't worn your rain gear in the shower, have you really prepped for a Philmont trek? Yeah, I'm bringing this back up to where was the next question I was going to look at here?
I was thinking we were looking at gear for next month after, I think, right?
Yeah, so I wanted to point out that if you find your way to Gear Report, which is the official sponsor of our Facebook group, so if you go there and go through the different thing in the Philmont category, Philmont Scout Ranch category, you'll find best backpacking tent options, and that's a Philmont-centric article, and it discusses the question that was asked here of do you recommend using the Philmont provided tents or should you bring your own? I talked through. Well, right, and that article actually goes into here are the people who say just use the Philmont tent, and in their own words, a few people saying, here's why we use a Philmont tent. And then from people who don't use them, in their words, why. And honestly, I could see both sides of it. I take my own. I know Sal is a big proponent of use of Philmont tents. What about the other two guys? What do you think?
Well, I think we had a discussion last year around this time that our group in 2021 that I took, we had all kinds of problems with ours, and mostly leaking issues around the ends and so on. But our group that went this past summer, used the Philmont tents, had no issues, had no problems. And so I think we probably just got a bad waterproof batch or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So it is, there's a lot of advantages to that. You don't have to put wear and tear on your own. You're paying for these tents to be used, and they're used. And so they did hold up really well on the top of Comanche Peak when it was hailing for 45 minutes. So they've got that going for them. So, yeah.
And I think, again, like we've said, it's kind of a mixed bag. What kind of a crew are you? Is it your first time? Are you a backpacking crew to begin with? Is this going to be a one and done? There's expenses to these things. I don't think you're going to get a decent tent, to stand up to the Philmont riggers, for $100 minimum. And do you want to spend that?
Yeah, I've actually been testing that. That's an interesting point, and I actually agreed with that point that you'd have to spend at least a couple $100 a tent. Until a couple months ago, I have gotten a few tents. I've had a couple companies, 2-3 companies, send me some tents to test this summer, like right after I got back from Philmont, and they're phenomenal, and they're $50 a piece shipped.
Wow.
And I'm like, holy smokes. I was going to say, I don't know how they're doing it. I suspect they're doing it with like sweatshop labor in, probably a Chinese prison camp or something. But so far they're holding up really well, and they're $50. So if I'm going to leave them up I'm going to set them up when it gets a little colder and stain them a little bit more and see how they hold up. But so far we may have some viable options that are cheap.
A lot of these tents come from, foreign countries.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. That's just the way it is.
The only downside with using, no, I shouldn't say the only, but a downside for using Philmont tents is you don't have the opportunity to use them on your shakedowns.
Yeah.
However, they're, maybe they're a half a pound heavier than what you would normally bring from home, but they're super easy to set up. You set them up once, and the next 10 days you got it made. They're not that difficult. They're spacious, 5x7.
I've never thought of bringing my own tent as an adult. I guess that's a oddity I never considered, just because I didn't want to carry my own tent.
Only time I bring mine is if it's the have a issue with one of the adults. It's like if 3 adults and we only need, or we have a female adult or something like that. Otherwise,
Right.
I'm using Philmont tents.
And I know the question is going to come up about, does everybody need their own tent? You get into the space requirements within a particular campsite. There may or may not be enough room for, I want to say, a crew of 12, and you have 12 tents.
We had a crew of 8, and we had a couple campsites that it was tight to get the 4 tents in there. We had, so it was tough. So I guess it just depends on where you're camping.
I would offer, and I think anybody on the panel here, if you could, go direct messaging with us, or even, email, and have a one-on-one discussion. There's so many variables on gear, from boots to chairs to tents to sleeping bags. There's a lot of issues to consider.
And like Darrel said earlier, and we've said it a bunch of probably every time we do these lives, that's what the practice hikes are for. That's what the shakedowns are for, to test your gear, to wear it, to use it. I mean, that Philmont shouldn't be the first time you're using this gear. You should know your gear fairly well. So, except for the tents, of course, but
yeah, that's
by that time.
That's the downside with a Philmont tent. You can't practice.
Well, hopefully by that time, the scouts that are going and the adults have put up multiple tents, so it's not a big deal. So, and
they got replacements, and you have an accident or have an issue. Not usually the next staff camp, they can, they have one or two tents in the back room that they can swap out. If it's your own, you're kind of on your own for replacement, whether they rip or a pole bends or breaks.
If you're carrying your own, they'll give you a tent. I've heard people say that as a reason to use the Philmont tent they'll let you use it. They'll swap you with a new one, but they'll do that if it's your tent as well. They're not going to leave you out there with no tent.
They're not going to leave you. They're not going to leave you in the lurch and say, "Well, so sad, too bad," But I mean, whatever the issue is, but that's still an issue. You're going to have to replace your own tent later on, and poles and so forth.
Sure. So I think that the things we're talking about, and I see there are a few more questions that have come in, and we are going to get to those. But we interrupted as we're going through what we learned. I want to talk about the big epiphany that I had this year that I've written on my board here, so I wouldn't forget. And it's a new perspective for me. And some of you guys are going to be like, wait, what? You're just now figuring this out? But I get my head so deep into the gear stuff and the other prep that the big picture, I think, eluded me to some degree until this summer. Partway through the trek this summer, it hit me. Philmont is a controlled environment for inexperienced backpackers to go on a once-in-a-lifetime trek. And for the people who are experienced backpackers, it's not about you. And that's hard for me to swallow, because I want to be, personally, I've got ways I want to do things, and I don't like being told to do it a different way. And I think today the light tonight the light came on as I was reflecting back on the summer, but the real epiphany happened, I think, about halfway through the trek, when it hit me that, I had described Philmont before as a series of backcountry adventures that are separated by some hiking. It's some activities in the backcountry, and I think that's a neat way to look at it as well. But the really big thing was kind of this idea that, it really is, you can do hikes in mountains. It's hard to find some of the program area type things on regular backpacking, but you can go backpack anywhere. It's different from Philmont because people who don't backpack can do it at Philmont because there's a support system built in.
I mean, do you really go to Philmont unless you take hike number 20 or 35? You're more likely going to Philmont for the program and the interaction between 8, 10, 12 people, yourself and your son or whatever, and your analogy of program separated by a little hiking. Yeah, that's pretty much it,
Yeah.
But it throws a whole series of dynamics at the crew, everything from program to gear and getting up on time and getting to your location, the next camp, dealing with adversity along the way, that gee, we headed down the wrong trail for 1.5 miles.
Right.
Well, it's a growing from activities. So, from not only the hiking, the activities, but from the first day on the trail to the end, the scouts change. So do the adults, but more dramatically, that crew is either really working together or they're not. And a lot of times it's a defining moment going from scout to into adulthood eventually, and it's something that'll stick with them forever. So it's a
And hopefully the experience, sure, the crew dynamics, but hopefully the experience of hiking and program and so forth, sets the seeds that, this is something they like, and maybe they want to go on additional and plan their own backpacking. It gives you a great foundation, to put together meals. I mean, you look at what they have in there, and you decide you're going to take a 4-day backpack trip with your hike with your crew or your troop. How do we organize all this stuff? I mean, Philmont has like you said, Jeff, has a great support system. I mean, from tents and food and logistics and maps, and I mean they
to replicate this experience on your own would take so many additional resources. And that's
Right.
without the program. That's just the backpacking and support structure that they have for that.
Right, but it gives you having been on a trek, even just one, you got an idea of what it's going to take to plan your own high adventure.
That's true.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Implementing outdoor program. Do we recommend that backcountry outdoor leadership skills, BCOLS, is a training that adults should get before going on a trek like this? I will tell you, I had to go use my Google Foo to figure out what BCOLS was. I couldn't remember. I have not taken that. And I don't know. I wonder, would I have been better?
We have a course like that in our council. I don't know if Darrel and I are in the same council, but they offer it a couple times a year to where it's not just for Philmont, but it's for any high adventure activity that you're planning within your unit to be able to really head that up. So they'll take you out backpacking and teach you those skills. And that's something I require for all the leaders in my troop that want to go on a high adventure trip, like a Philmont, like a Northern Tier, and some other areas. Sea base, not so much. That's kind of a show up and get on the boat. But
I think we called it IOLS, outdoor leader skills, and it goes. We just had a council or district committee meeting the other day, and it goes to an issue I'm sure is across the board, is getting leaders trained. Even if it's just the simple, the basic training for the position you're in. And our district, I mean, look at your training records, the number of leaders trained, it's a sad story, let me tell you.
Yeah, so IOLS is I think more of a standardized national requirement. Right. I don't know about this BCOLS. That's one that we could have it in my council, and I just don't really pay attention. So, because I do have a problem with that.
We don't have
to the question on the screen. I would say yes, at least one person in the crew.
Yeah. So Sal, you are a you're a
skills weekend
ambassador. That's the word I was looking for.
Yep.
Sal, you're an ambassador, right?
Yes, sir.
So how's the program running now? Is PASS like what it was before, or is it different for this year? How do people do that if they'd like to?
The only one Philmont offers is the one. It's called Backcountry Sneak Peek. So you go to Philmont. It's like a mini trek. You're there for, I think, 5 days, and they run you through like it'd be a trek. But you have to go to Philmont. Years ago, they used to have the rangers come out, and they did it throughout the country. They're not doing that anymore.
Gotcha. Okay.
So the only way to do it is to go to Philmont to do the Philmont
Well,
sneak peek.
Or you could do like an autumn adventure and
Yeah.
take your group of adults and just tell the ranger that goes with you on that you're looking to prep for a summer trek or whatever. Right.
So but what we do in my council is we do a Philmont skills weekend. Third weekend.
So, and that's the other resource that I'd like people to be aware of is Sal is the Philmont Ambassador for his council. Each council should have a designated Philmont Ambassador. So if you have questions, if you can't make it out to Philmont to do the training there, reach out to your council and find out who your ambassador is, and they can help you get up to speed locally as well. Maybe you don't have BCOLS in your council, or there was another question related to this. I do not know the answer. Do any of you guys know? Powderhorn, BCOLS, how do they compare? I have a couple scouts that were at Powderhorn this past weekend, I believe, and I did not go with them. But the way they described it, it overlaps with what I'm reading here about BCOLS for rock climbing, caving, whitewater, mountain biking, winter camping, helping people develop specialized skills to do those different things. That kind of sounded like what Powderhorn is, but I don't know. Do you guys know the difference?
I think Powderhorn is more organized across the board. I mean, I think a lot of councils have that. Some of the others don't have the kind of the other course we're talking about. We have to have
most of Powderhorn is a lecture, show and tell in classroom environment.
Yeah, and they may have a few, like how our council does it. They do you do all the shooting sports, rock climbing, climbing and rappelling. You'll do some water stuff. They'll do some like air boating, but the rest of it, a lot of it, like Darrel says, it's a lot of lecture. Like a lot of times I do the backpacking part of the session, which is a show and tell. Here's all your gear. Here's what it's used for. May do a introduction to wilderness first aid. You get an hour to talk about wilderness first aid. Do you teach it? No, you just give a sample of what you teach. So it's a sampling of all the high adventure stuff you can do in scouting. That's the way I look at Powderhorn.
Yeah. So if you want to find more information on BCOLS, you can Google it. And when I did, what I found was the National Capital Area Council. That's the website you see in the little URL on the screen here. You can go read about it. And I suppose you could use your Google Foo to figure out about Powderhorn as well. Wish I had more specific information for folks, but that's what I'm going to suggest.
I'm going to post the link. I've got kind of the class that's taught in our council, and I have a kind of an overview just in case there's others out there that want to do that. It's basically an overview of what they do during that. And as soon as I find find the way to put the comment in the comment area, I will do that. So.
I know Jeff is going to jump in with a question on the screen, but before you get there, Jeff, going back to originally, what did we learn? And when Sal mentioned wilderness first aid, make sure you have and start now to find and get enrolled in wilderness first aid CPR classes.
Yeah. So Powderhorn, BCOLS are not required courses per Philmont.
Right. But
wilderness first aid
and CPR is required. I haven't seen it, but I strongly suspect 2023, they may be looking for 3 people to be trained as opposed to the prior 2, because this past year, a lot of trained individuals came off the trail.
They're recommending 3 this year.
You're
Required,
responsible.
2024 is going to be required 3. This year it's recommended 3.
Right. You're doing your crew a disservice if you don't get that training. And I can't believe, but it happened many, I don't know how many is, but probably in the low double digits, but crews that actually showed up without wilderness first aid or CPR trained individuals in the crew. How they thought they could show up at Philmont without that training is beyond me. And
Yeah.
Philmont is put in a highly awkward position, liability wise and so forth. I mean, do they send the crew home? And how do you you're in base camp for 24 hours.
Right.
How do you get a wilderness first aid course in 24 hours?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So go for the running
sure
shoes there, Jeff.
Yeah. So why don't you guys talk about that first? I'm trying to sort through something else here in the background, an administrative function. And I know we have different opinions on this panel, so why don't we get one of the other opinions out there while I'm working on this, and then I'll come in and tell you the right way.
Ooh.
Yeah, but if
don't be a Jeff.
If I agreed with you, we would both be wrong.
Oh my goodness.
Well,
I'm a boot
talk
guy.
about shoes or boots, huh? Yes.
I've got both, so I don't.
Yeah.
I like my boots. They were nice, waterproof, walking through water. We had a lot of water, but they were heavy. So I've got some trail runners now trying out. So I'm dipping my feet into both streams, I think. So
I'm still a boot guy. Yep. I'm still a boot guy. I like boots. I recommend boots. If you don't want to wear them, that's fine. I'm going to say, if whatever you get, practice in them. Make sure they're broken in.
And don't tell anybody you're not lacing the laces up. That could be horrible, Jeff.
Oh, people's heads explode when you tell them that. I can tell you that for certain. Another opinion that you can find, I keep referring back to gearreport.com because that's my website. That's where I have put all the information that I think is going to be helpful to people, outside of what we have in the Facebook group. Andy Parrish is on the trail as of tomorrow morning, if I'm not mistaken. He is near a trailhead getting ready to go on a multi-day backpacking trip. Else he would be here with us. Because he's not here, I want to call attention to this Philmont footwear, how to choose the best backpack. Andy is one of these. He's not going to take a position either way. He just kind of throws some options out there for you. So if you want to figure it out for yourself, he will give you some thoughts from either side of the aisle. Why you might want boots, why you might want shoes, why you might want extra ventilated, why you might want waterproof. He'll throw out some information there in that article if you care to look at that. I've got in the best budget backpacking gear article that I have, there's a section on footwear that you can read as well. So we do have some documented information there. My thoughts on this are pretty straightforward. I have done a trek in heavy boots, like waterproof boots. I've done a trek in backpacking shoes. I've done 2 treks in trail runners. I've done one trek where I laced my shoes or tightened the laces partially one time on the whole trek. And it was for a long downhill. And we got to the bottom of the downhill and I was like, well, that was a big waste of time, and didn't bother tying them the rest of the trip. So I've done it just about every way. I haven't hiked in Crocs yet. Probably won't. Don't see that happening. Haven't hiked in like Tevas or anything like that. Don't see that happening, but I've done it a variety of different ways. And for me, the best option for me, the way I backpack, is the lightest trail runners that have good thick cushion soles that I can find, and super, super ventilated, because it doesn't matter. They're going to get wet if it rains enough or So that's my perspective. But what I'll tell you, if you're thinking about doing trail runners, all right, Sal, you'll probably like this because Sal is a dedicated boot person. If you carry a heavy pack, you probably will want footwear that has what do they call? I can't remember what it's called now. The reinforcement that's in the sole of a boot to keep it from flexing too much. What is that called?
Well, I got a steel shank or vibratum.
Shank. That's it. Yep. So you probably want some, if you're carrying a heavy pack, and when I say heavy pack, I mean like 50 pounds or heavier. If you're carrying a 50-pound pack or more, or even if you're carrying a very light pack, but you're carrying excess booty, weight is weight is weight. By the time it gets to your feet, it doesn't matter if it's on your back or on your backside or on your front, whatever, wherever you're carrying the weight, you're carrying it. Your feet have to deal with it. If you are going really heavy, you probably need a stiffer shank, something to give you more support so they don't actually break down under your feet. If you're going light, and I can get away with lighter shoes, with the trail running shoes, because I go as light as I can. I'm typically around 30, 32 pounds leaving base camp with 5 liters of water, 4 or 5 liters of water, and 4 days worth of food. So if you can get in that neighborhood, then trail runners, unless you have medical issues that dictate otherwise, trail runners are probably going to be fine for you. If you have foot issues, if you have ankle issues, if your physician says you need to wear supportive boots, maybe it's because they're ignorant of how footwear works when you're backpacking. Maybe you have a legitimate medical issue. Who knows? You got to figure that out for yourself. And when do you figure that out? Anyone?
When you get
there.
When you get there, I prefer shakedown hikes. Yeah. So I know everyone expects me to just campaign for trail runners nonstop, but there are people who really will benefit from boots. I'm not telling you got to wear what I wear. I'm saying you got plenty of time before you hit the trail to figure out, do you want to hike in heavy boots? Do you want waterproof? Do you want ventilated? I like lightweight ventilated because I pack light, but you got to figure out what you're comfortable with. And if you want links to various different things, I've got them in my articles. So you go check those out if you care to. All right. And I dropped some links in the chat along the way as well. I'm getting behind on the comments. Rob, have you hit your lessons from this year? I know you weren't on the trail this year, but do you have anything that any observations you picked up?
Yes. And, last month I bowed out of the panel because, my gosh, it looked like Hollywood Squares. There were, 9, 12, whatever people. So I thought I'd come in this month. I actually did a similar sort of interview with our lead advisor, Brian King. He was with my troop. He went this year with his crew, pretty close to when they got off the trail. So it was kind of a hot wash. Hey, what happened? What was good? What was bad? What would you recommend? And that's one of the podcasts that I put out last month around the time we did this. So one thing that, because we went through his whole trek and he told me what they liked, what they didn't. One good idea, they brought, we have 2 6-liter dromedary bags for the dry camps, and those kind of things are recommended. But as they thought about it, they thought, it might be a good idea, depending on the size of your crew, maybe everybody get a liter platypus, put it in their bag, use that as your extra water. And if you've got 10, 12 liters of water, you probably have about as much with that platypus. And that distributes it a little more evenly. I like that idea. That's probably something I'll use on the next Philmont Trek because that weighs nothing. Actually, it weighs less than I think the dromedary bag. So I thought that was a really good idea. They had to be. They had a backpack that blew out. One of the boys. They were able to get a replacement, just like talking about tent replacements, same kind of thing. they sent back, and actually they took his backpack back to base camp.
Yeah.
Be flexible. They had to be real flexible. They were not able to go up Mount Phillips on their trip. They had a southern trek because of all the down trees, and they ended up staying at Phillips Junction for a day. They weren't scheduled. They had a great time. They would have had a really tough hike to get up, I think a 12-mile each way to get up Phillips. So they decided, hey, let's relax. Let's work on crew dynamics, and we'll just do that next time or not at all. And that, if they would have done that, it would have been really tough. And maybe that was the major stuff. They had they had to change their trek like a lot of people because of the fire, but they were able to go.
Yep.
So it was a good thing. So that's kind of what they learned.
You mentioned
this year. So yeah,
you mentioned the podcast with Brian King. I just posted a link in the comments. The URL that's up here for this page, High Adventure for Scouts and Scouters, highadventurescouting.com. I have it on pretty good authority that this is a pretty cool site that is worth your time to go check out. At least that's a rumor. I read it somewhere.
At least that's what I told you to say.
That's where I heard it.
Yeah.
Don't believe everything you read on the internet.
And you see, I finally got the Trek Talk from last month up.
Look at that.
Tonight. So those are always pretty popular, and I put the whole thing just about. So it was a good discussion. I like that. Goes along with the hot wash with Brian King. So it was that's actually the most popular episode I think I've done. So that's
interesting. I'd never heard the term hot wash before. And, as a perpetual 13-year-old, I conjured up several different options for what it could be. So maybe that has something to do with why you,
I didn't put it had adult content. So, that's,
we already addressed the question that's on here, is WFA requirement, but then we had another one, and I wanted to address that while we have the screen share on. I can tell you that if you happen to be available to get yourself to Tampa, then Suncoast WFA does training there.
Yes, I do.
I know most, if not all, the councils run wilderness first aid training. And I know that what I found locally is my council. I did it, and in another council for this summer. The prior year, I couldn't get help from my council. There wasn't availability, and I ended up not getting it. And we had enough in the crew, but I'll tell you, I haven't been through that. The struggle is real trying to get wilderness first aid training. I would say absolutely check all of the surrounding councils if yours can't help you, and see if there's something within easy driving distance. But if not, you may have to do some travel. Sal?
Yep. Check your local American Red Cross websites. Yeah, they're listed on there also, because they may not be with your council. The company called ESCI, they do a wilderness first aid that is half online. You take the test online, then you got to find an instructor to do a skills test. So there's 2 expenses on that one. There's an option. Check your local REIs. You have one close by. They do wilderness first aid, but I'll tell you right now, they are very expensive compared to everybody else. They're probably twice as much as a council course would be, or twice as much as my course would be. So the REI does have classes. They used to. I haven't seen one lately in my area. So
if you happen to do your WFA training with Sal at Suncoast. He has a coupon code exclusive to this group, and it's called Team No Chair. And if you use that coupon code, it is going to get you 15% off.
Whoa.
Wow.
Actually, I just made that up right on the spot. So,
Okay. Well, no,
yeah,
actually,
he is under no obligation to honor that coupon code because I literally made it up right here on the spot.
well, actually,
Sorry.
this year, I'll give you one thing right now. This year, we actually,
Yeah, you just disappeared.
I think he said, "I've had enough of this." And he took off. And it looks like he's trying to get back in. I'll give it a second. All right.
Yeah,
there you go.
there it
Welcome
is.
back to the program.
I'm back. I lost it. It's locked up on me. Usually,
Yeah.
when you do wilderness first aid, the CPR part of it is additional charge. I don't know why they started doing that, because some people, I guess, get CPR trained other places or through the work. I'm doing it this year as one cost. CPR for wilderness first aid is all in one price, no additional charge for CPR. So, yeah, just something to think about. But yeah, my first class is in December. This is where I got my first class scheduled.
Okay, good. In the comments, I've been dropping links as we talk about different things. I mentioned it, but I thought, as I'm trying to get caught up on comments, I would highlight that those are in there. I felt like I was missing something here. I'm scrolling. Oh, okay. I'm going to go back and
I see Andy is
wow,
overrated.
there's all kind of stuff in here. Okay, scrolling back. What was the first day? Oh, I learned that sealed food does go stale, and you list chickpeas. Okay, food can go stale. The chickpeas were disgusting when they were packaged. I don't think that necessarily was something that happened after. Yeah.
It's kind of like, do croutons go stale?
Yeah. Yeah. Andy's
Think
overrated. I can flip flops. I'm trying to load on the other screen to see who that is. I have a feeling it's probably Andy himself asking that question. There he is. Yep, that was Andy. I suspected as much. And then he said rock plate instead of a steel shank rock plate. And I think the idea there is so I have a pair. I can't tell you what they are because they actually haven't been released yet. There's no branding. I'll cover the branding up on the other side. These are they call it embargoed when they send out review products before they're actually have been announced to the public. But these have a super thin sole on the bottom. I mean, you can see there's nothing there really. These do not have a rock plate. You take something like this to Philmont, and you are going to feel every little stone under you. So I like a shoe that has a thicker padded sole, and the rock plate would be an insert that actually blocks the impact of those rocks from coming through and hitting your feet. So not just padding, but something more than that. And I believe that is separate from a shank, which is more of a limits flexibility of the sole thing. But a lot of different features you can look for in different kinds of shoes. All right. Oh, we are in all of the controversial stuff tonight. I love it. Is Philmont going to change the cooking method? 8-quart pots seem excessive. We would like to do remote canister stoves, but are worried about getting a reliable stove rather than a cheap knockoff. There are a variety of things here. And I can tell you that when I started my first trek, we used a white gas stove where you poured it in, screwed it tight, pumped it up. Not a remote canister, but it was like built into the stove. The old
Like a peak
what do they
stove.
call it? A peak
Yeah.
one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have
God,
one.
I hate those
That's a pain in
stoves.
the
They were
butt.
terrible. I called it the Clogomatic because it just wouldn't work reliably. Anyhow, is Philmont going to change the cooking method? Philmont has already, for this summer that just ended, they updated their guidance on the cooking method and published a PDF that talked about it and officially said there is flexibility as long as you stay within some boundaries and you're safe. And their big concerns is no one gets hurt, no one gets sick. So if you have a method that's going to work within that, and then this is a very big picture kind of view that I'm saying, then they're generally okay with it. But there are so many little gotchas along the way that you're going to end up like this summer. Last summer in 2021, just about every meal that you got that needed to be heated came in the rehydration bags. They were like Mountain House meals. You could literally pour the water in them, seal them up, they'd rehydrate. You didn't even hardly have to use the pots for anything but water. And they went out of their way to say, as long as the bags are made for rehydration, you can do that. But if they're not, then don't, because they may come apart or leach chemicals into the food. Like, there are some legit safety concerns. Okay, so after 2021, I'm thinking, okay, we are home free to do almost all in the bag rehydration. So then we get there for 2022, and I think on a 12-day trek, we had 2 or 3 meals out of the whole time that were in a rehydratable bag. Everything else were in bags that were in no way suitable for rehydration. They had to be put in a pot to be rehydrated or some other means of doing that. So while I have been on a campaign to get the cooking method changed, it may have changed as much as it realistically can, unless they're going to commit to doing the bags you can rehydrate in every year. They do give you some flexibility now. And
yeah. This year you had 1, 2, maybe 3 meals, counting a breakfast that was in the Mountain House. Everything else was in a plastic bag.
Yeah, the biscuits and gravy and the spaghetti.
And then 1 more, and that's it.
Yeah.
Everything else was in. You couldn't use it. But
yeah, you really couldn't. And believe me, if anyone knows me, they know if there was a way to do it, I would be saying, no, you can do it, because I hate the whole dump everything in the pot cooking method. But it was really, it's all you had to do. It's all you could do.
I take the
comment from behind the scenes. The more convenient those mountain home and bags that you can rehydrate in, a lot of it comes down to cost.
Oh yeah, no doubt. That stuff is pricey.
Yeah, when you're buying for 20,000 people, 25 cents an item adds up pretty darn quick. And some of the issues, I know I talked to the commissary manager, some of the issues were the supply chain.
Yeah.
They just couldn't get them.
Yeah, so the 8-quart pot seems excessive. I believe that even if you use their cooking method, the 8-quart pot is excessive. That is my assessment.
You could probably really get by with a 6 or maybe even a 5 if you could. I don't know. They make a 5-quart.
Yep.
We had a 6 on ours. We had nesting pots that we have with our troop. And it's too bad Andy isn't on here tonight, because he just did a really good video about stove difference in time and heating up water.
The heat exchanger pots.
Yeah.
I know he's been accumulating heat exchanger pots to test. So Andy Parrish Outdoors is the website, or he has a website and YouTube, I believe. Either way, if it's on YouTube, whatever, you can go find the video that Rob is referring to and check that out. I know it's something we've talked about in our prior discussions here, about the heat exchanger pots and seeing how well they did or didn't. So that's good information. As far as we'd like to do remote canister stoves, that's what I recommend. And I was the the Peak One stove years ago, and then Whisper Light for a couple decades. I was like a Whisper Light evangelist. I think those are past their prime now. And I have found that the canister stoves are a easier to use, more reliable option, especially at Philmont, where they have fuel contamination issues at times in the backcountry. Although, Sal, did you notice, or Darrel, did you hear anything when we were getting fuel? I noticed specific. I think both places we got fuel, but the one that's coming to mind is Apache Springs, where their fuel tank, where they pumped the fuel out, they had a really nice filter on the output of that storage container, which I had not seen that before. So I think that Philmont is trying to correct the issue they've had with liquid fuel getting contaminated pretty easily. So that's really good to see, because that's been an ongoing problem for decades, I think.
Yeah, I noticed also, it used to be in the guidebook to adventure, they recommended that if you were using white gas, that you brought your own filter, so that as you pour it from the bottle into the stove, it goes through another filter.
Yeah.
But and also canisters, I think they're just, along with the other things, they're just safer.
Yeah.
Well, they're easier too.
Yeah,
I mean, it's quicker and use less gas. It's just, I'm in the same realm with you, Jeff, that I've used the MSR stoves for years, and I don't want to use them anymore because it's just a pain in the butt to light them, to prime them, to fill it up.
To address the question on the screen, getting a reliable, I've seen and used a couple of the really knockoff, imports that are in the $20-$25 range. I mean, there's not a lot to go wrong with these things, and I would be pretty comfortable, with some of these lesser expensive import models.
Well, I've used some of these cheap knockoff stoves at Philmont the past 2 summers. I say the past 2, I take that back. We didn't use it this summer. I offered and they said, no, we have some white gas stoves they wanted to use. Within a couple days at our first stop, we bought some canisters, and fortunately they had the adapter to go to canister stoves, because one of the pumps didn't make it. So we had one stove that we could use and one that it didn't have a pump to pressurize it. So but someone sent me these pictures. Darren J sent these pictures here of some burn blistering from some spilled fuel from a white gas stove that caught on fire and had some pretty serious 2nd-degree burn. 3 inches wide, 6 inches long, took months to heal. That's much harder to happen if you're using a canister stove. I have yet another article here, backpacking white gas versus canister stoves, backpacking stoves for Philmont. I dropped a link to this article in the comments, and you can read through some pros and cons. You can read through some comments from people who like different types of stoves. I mean, it's not just my opinion. It is, I've solicited information from other experienced people and said, hey, what do you think? And put quotes around it and pasted it in so you can see their unfiltered, similar to the fuel at Philmont, unfiltered opinions. All right. You interested in traveling to Hawaii to conduct WFA training? I'm going to speak for Sal and say you got to cover all of his expenses.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not even going to charge you like as your manager for arranging this for you. I'll negotiate it for you, get the best deal possible. That's
probably
as long as you're happy. That's all I want.
Cover my expenses, and I need at least 12 to 15 people in the class. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean that. But in all seriousness, Sal, you're retired, right?
Yes, sir.
Like literally, if there are crews or maybe council contingents that just can't find the training, all jokes aside, are you available for them to reach out and say, if you get enough people, you know, have WFA will travel?
Yeah, I would, but the thing is, it's the gear I have to bring. I mean, all the CPR dummies and all that stuff. That's what, I mean, if it's drivable, I'll throw them back in the pickup truck. But if I had to fly with all my gear, I'd have to figure out how I'm going to do it. But it's doable. Anything's doable.
Yeah, probably more doable if they have their own CPR dummies. They're just lacking a certified trainer, maybe.
Yeah, if they have that,
stuff.
Yeah, because I have 15 CPR dummies. It makes it much easier. I can do 15 people. A lot of people a lot of times they only have like maybe one or maybe 3 dummies, and you get a class of 15. So how are you going to do CPR with 3 people? With 3 dummies, you have 15 people. You do 3 at a time. What are the rest of the people doing? Why 3 people being trained on CPR? They're standing around doing nothing. That's why I like I
record and upload TikToks.
There you go. That works.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I travel. I mean, why not? I'm game.
All right. I'm going to make the official last call for questions. So if you have anything else you wanted to ask, there may actually be a moment or two to address those questions. I know we are already over our time. I'm going to assume that when Darrel did this a minute ago, he wasn't saying, Sal's crazy. He was saying,
yes, he was.
Let's wrap this up. It's past my bedtime.
But there are a couple of comments I would like to make yet before we get out of here from what I've been seeing on the page.
Wait, hey, Jeff, real quick. The question about, please DM me, you don't need CPR training, just wilderness first aid. Part of wilderness first aid training is you must be CPR trained to take. It's part of wilderness. You have to be CPR trained either after or during the wilderness first aid class. So it's part of wilderness first aid. You can't take wilderness first aid and not be CPR trained.
They might have had it before they.
You can already have it as long as you're current.
You can already have it, but if you don't have it, you have to take it.
Right. Our council does it like on Friday night, and then the rest of the class is on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, I do mine Saturday night. I do CPR Saturday afternoon. We stop about 4 o'clock.
There you go.
CPR. Yeah, we do it at night. Yeah.
So those comments.
See if there's
CPR. Sal, that is Travis. He is in the coming through Facebook in the Philmont Trek Talk group. So I ask you to DM him. So if you want to go find that in the chat on the live broadcast in the Facebook group.
Travis, okay. I'll find him, or he can find me.
Or Travis, you could send Sal.
Yeah,
you could send
Travis,
Sal Porto Jr. a note.
He's everywhere.
All right, we got another one here.
Everywhere.
Oh, another one from Travis, and this is a good one. Coming from living at sea level, is 1 day sufficient for a crew to get acclimated to elevation? Anyone?
No.
We go an extra day.
Yeah,
we travel a day early.
Well,
definitely.
1 day isn't enough. I mean, and you really can't get there soon enough. I mean, to be acclimated, to be sufficiently acclimated, you probably need to be there 5 days to a week ahead of time. But as much time as you can get at altitude, or even half altitude, if you will, somewhere along the way you stop somewhere and they're at 4,000, 5,000 feet. That's going to help you.
And they also step you up first of the trek. You're not going to 10,000 feet. You're going to 7.
Nobody's doing Baldy before the 3rd day.
But that is something to look at in your trek selection. Like the part of being successful on your trek is understanding the capabilities of your crew and making sure all treks are not created equal. They have treks that are designed to be much more physically challenging. They have some that are designed to maximize program time. So if you know that you're coming from sea level and you have people who aren't in the best shape maybe you aim for treks that aren't as physically strenuous, because unless you get up to altitude a week ahead of time, everyone is going to have some impact probably from altitude. Hopefully what I've seen is it's generally not the young people, it's older people who are most likely to struggle on the trail anyway, will have the additional struggle of having to deal with altitude sickness or just reduced energy. Even if it's not full-blown altitude issues, it's going to have a bigger impact on people the older they are generally, or the more out of shape they are. So if someone's already going to be struggling, it's going to be even worse. And there are treks that do have some pretty challenging up and down fairly early, and will put you at some altitude fairly early. And there are some where they really do step you up much more gradually. Just be aware of that when you pick your treks.
And I think that's going to be one of the subjects of, November, December trek selection on this group. What are the tips and things and nuances that you ought to be looking at? One thing I do want to mention, I've seen a lot of comments on the web page. The first big payment is coming up. Like Liberty Mutual, pay for only what you need. Just because you got to, you think you're going to have 12 people, don't pay for 12. You can
pay for 8
easily.
Pay for 8. That's right.
Don't pay for 12.
You got to pay for 8, and I don't care what you do with your llama or whatever, but from Liberty Mutual, Emu, but
Limu.
And the other thing, transportation. I see a lot of comments about transportation and renting vans and so forth. That is a mixed bag, a can of worms, and it's not going to be cheap no matter what you do.
Yeah, and a lot of things have changed the last year or two, and it is a kind of fluid environment for buses, for rental vehicles, for the train. I mean, I heard some things about I did the train this past summer for the first time, and we were the first train to run after the derailment. So that was a little nerve-wracking, but also we thought we were going to be stuck there. So it doesn't matter what you do travel-wise, things are getting tricky for travel.
I mean, my costs, I've already got my bus and my train fare taken care of. Trains are up a little bit, not much, but the buses and the fuel charge. I mean, last year they contacted me the week before we left and said, "Oh, we got a fuel surcharge. It's going to cost you another $125."
Wow.
Oof.
Okay. And we are at the end of our time. We're going to try to deal with the last few questions that have come in here. What is the ideal target weight for backpacks for scouts and then for adults? Rob, what do you tell people?
I told my crew last year, and the one this year, that shoot for as little as possible, but 25 was kind of my target for these guys that I had. I actually bought a luggage scale. I think everybody's got, a lot of people have them. Every practice hike we went out that we had gear in, they weighed their backpacks. So they were very well aware of what they had in their backpacks, how much it weighed, and that they needed to get down as much as possible. And that was part of what that's part of why you have these shakedown things. So I don't know, Sal may have a different level, but that we didn't get there. We didn't get to 25, but I think a lot of the guys were around 30. So, which is not bad.
Well, I think the Guidebook to Adventure, I'm recalling from memory, I think they're saying it depends upon your weight, like 30%. Right. A smaller individual can't carry that much. And then you look at your crew. The ideal weight, I would say, is probably 25 to 30% of your body weight. But you're going to have some people who are more than capable. Just because they are doesn't mean you want to load them down. Right. But
It also depends on your day. If you have we had this year, we had dry camp and picked up food all at the same time. So you got extra food and extra water. So you just went up to 30%. So I always tell everybody 25 to 30% is a good goal for your weight of your backpack.
So, and you're saying scouts and adults? Do any of you treat scouts and adults differently?
What do you mean? No, the only thing I do differently is the scouts. It's a lot of times the adults, they overpack. Whether you tell them not to or not, they're going to say, "I need this. I need this." The crew gear is carried by scouts. The adults do not carry crew gear. That's because I let them.
And then you always got the adult and the scoutmaster who carries in case we need this.
Yeah, I don't do that anymore.
So that's where I would like to really challenge people to say, if you're an adult, it's not your job to carry all the just in case stuff. Most adults in scouting have grown up with this, I'm the safety line, you're there to be the safety judgment, not the safety gear locker, because let's face it, the older and more experienced and more valuable people are, in terms of experience and being able to help in a variety of different situations, probably the older and less able to carry the super heavy packs they're going to be and still keep up in the incredibly rugged, high altitude Philmont backcountry. So it often happens, I think, with at least one or two adults on most crews where they feel like they have to carry all this extra stuff just in case. And then they end up like they should be carrying less than the scouts because they're older and not in as good a shape. Like, hey, I'm about to turn 50. I remember what I could do when I was 17, but maybe I forgot that I've been working a desk job for 30 years, So those people get out there and I think have a rude awakening a couple days in, like, oh my goodness, this is way harder than I thought it'd be. Why'd I bring all this stuff?
I took it upon myself this year to for our group that went this summer. I laid everything out that I took last summer, pulled out stuff that I wouldn't have taken, and they said, "This is all you need. You don't need anything else." And funny enough, one of the leaders I went with them on the shakedown hike, and he had a military style shovel to have just in case he needed to relieve himself. I said, "You don't need that." Well, I've been in situations where you don't. We used it once and we used the small trowel. That's it. He did not end up taking that to Philmont, but he did on the practice hike, and I let him. Like, great, I'm not your crew leader, and I'm not your lead advisor.
I don't want to minimize the things that could happen in the emergencies and so forth, but this is part of the shakedown and the hiking and figuring out what your gear can do for multiple applications. People talk about a jacket and a rain jacket. You don't need both. You can wear your rain jacket even if it isn't raining. But things can do dual duty, and look for those things
and figure them out on your shakedowns, because last minute decisions often turn into wrong decisions, either to take things like, no, I'm going to take it, or to not take things. Because I know we had some people on the crew. I didn't even meet the crew that I hiked with this summer until we were meeting at their church to get on the bus to go get on the train to go to Philmont. So I knew nothing about who they were, if they'd backpacked before, what kind of gear they had, how much they were carrying. I knew nothing. We get to base camp and we're getting things out to do the shakedown with the ranger, and I'm looking at these huge packs that looked really heavy and trying to say, hey, do you really need this? Do you really need that? What can we leave behind? And some people made some rash decisions. They were not about to let this stranger go through their whole pack and tell them, no, you don't need this stuff, which is a shame because I think we could have helped some people had they been willing to do that. But
Well, the other
ended
thing
up
of that,
abandoning a few things that were like the wrong things, like extra insulation layers, and they were cold the whole trek. And they kept telling me, well, you told me not to take so much. Yeah, I also said strategically, let's pull out the right things, not just pull out something, you know? So last minute decisions tend to be bad. Work that out in a more logical, methodical manner on your shakedowns.
and see what other people are taking, you know, that can, you know, you don't need one, everybody doesn't need, you know, one of something. You know, they can share
Yeah.
with the crew or your whatever.
Mhm.
But I like the comment there, don't pack your fears. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Okay.
Hey.
With that, I think we are going to call it. So thank you to everyone on the panel. So Rob, Darrel, in case anyone joined late, Mr. T, that's Mr. Darrel Tadsen. We really appreciate him being here. Sal
Yeah, yes, sir.
Porto Jr., we appreciate you being here as well.
Yes,
You
sir.
guys always bring a great diversity of experience and information that's really valuable. I really appreciate, I just hit my microphone. I really appreciate you guys continuing to give your time and help people to have the best trek possible. Thank you so much to everyone who left comments and questions. All of that interaction was, it really helps to make these discussions more valuable when we have people submitting comments. I'd like to, I'm going to give 27 points, no, 30 points to Jeremy McDaniel for this comment up on the screen. Don't pack your fears. Did I say feels? Yeah. My coffee ran out a little while ago. I apologize for that. But, you know, just like whose line is it anyway? The competitions are all made up and the points don't matter, but you just got 30 points. There you go. So thanks again. We do this the second Tuesday of every month. In between second Tuesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern, every other day of the month, you can go to our Facebook group. It's been scrolling down here at the bottom. There are links in the chat to all the different things you could like as well. Until next time, I think we're ready to wrap up. Is anyone not ready?
Make it so.
Ask your crew leader.
Hike on.
Oh!